Okay, let's dive right in. We're going to look at the UK economy, but maybe not in the way you're used to. Forget the headlines for a second and think of it like a high-performance engine, one that just isn't running right. We're going to pop the hood and try to figure out what's causing all those strange noises and the serious lack of power.
You hear a lot of noise about who's to blame, right? But the problems might be much, much deeper than the day-to-day political chatter. So we're not just going to look at who's in the driver's seat. We're going to get our hands dirty and inspect the actual mechanics of the engine itself. We want to see what's really going on under there. So first things first, let's start with the warning lights blinking on the dashboard. These are the problems that everyone can see and, more importantly, feel in their daily lives. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Prices for groceries, for energy, they just stay stubbornly high. Meanwhile, the economy as a whole is basically flatlining. And on top of that, more people are out of work, and the government just keeps on borrowing. So what on earth is causing all these warning lights to flash at the exact same time?
Okay, so like any good mechanic, we're going to start with the usual suspects. We'll check the standard tools that policymakers always reach for when things go wrong. But as we're about to see, those old, reliable tools, they just aren't working like they're supposed to. Let's start with a classic, Okun's Law. Now, in a normal, healthy engine, when you step on the accelerator, that's economic growth, the car should go faster, right? And that means less unemployment. It's a pretty fundamental idea of how a modern economy is supposed to work. But look at this. In the UK, that connection is shockingly weak. For every 1% the economy grows, unemployment falls by, well, by an amount so small you can barely even measure it. To give you some perspective, in a healthier economy, you'd expect that number to be closer to 0.4 or 0.5. This tells us the accelerator pedal, it just isn't properly connected to the wheels anymore. All right, here's the other classic tool from the toolbox, the Phillips curve. The basic idea here is that there's a trade-off. If you slow the economy down and unemployment goes up, fewer people are spending money. And that should, naturally, cause prices to come down. It's the standard medicine for fighting high inflation. Well, guess what? In the UK, that trade-off is completely broken. The curve is almost totally flat. And what that means is you get all the pain of rising unemployment without the gain of lower inflation. The medicine just isn't having any effect. So what does all this tell us? It tells us that the basic tune-up tools, trying to boost growth to create jobs or slowing spending to fight inflation, they just aren't getting the job done. This isn't a problem you can fix with a simple adjustment. The fault has to be somewhere deeper inside the engine itself. Okay, so it's time to lift the hood. We're officially moving past the dashboard warnings and the standard toolkit to inspect the core mechanics, the very heart of the UK economy. And this is where things get really interesting. This number here is called the fiscal multiplier, and it's a critical diagnostic reading. It tells us that for every single pound the government spends to try and stimulate the economy, we only get 26 pence of actual growth back. It is incredibly inefficient. It's like pouring fuel into a really leaky tank. And this slide right here perfectly illustrates the trap the economy is stuck in. That tiny little boost you get from government spending gets completely wiped out, or even worse, by the big negative hit you take from raising taxes to pay for it all. You end up running hard just to stand still or even slide backwards. Now, think of this number as the engine's natural idle speed. It's the interest rate where the economy isn't being sped up or slowed down. At just 0.4%, it is incredibly low. And that means the Bank of England has almost no room to maneuver. In a crisis, they can't cut rates very far before they hit zero and basically run out of road. So now we're getting to it. After all that digging, we've found what this analysis says are the two major structural faults, the real reasons this engine is sputtering. Check out this gap. It's like a clogged fuel line. Even when the central bank sets interest rates really low, there is this huge wedge between that official rate and what businesses actually have to pay to borrow money. And that blockage chokes off the investment the economy needs to grow. So a huge structural problem is that the private sector, the people who are actually supposed to generate growth and create jobs, are finding it really expensive to borrow money. This financial friction is basically starving the engine of fuel. Okay, now for the second big problem. Let's talk about the engine's top speed. This isn't about how fast it's going right now, it's about the maximum speed it was built to achieve when everything is running perfectly. And this might be the biggest discovery of our whole inspection.
The UK's engine hasn't just been poorly maintained, it's been structurally downgraded. It's gone from a V12, capable of real speed, to something more like a sputtering V4. It simply can't generate the horsepower it used to, and that explains this constant feeling of going nowhere fast.
So after our full inspection, after looking past the flashing lights and getting deep into the engine's mechanics, what's the final verdict? It seems the economy is stuck in what you could call a doom loop. It starts here. The engine's potential is just too low. Because of that, the government is always running a deficit and borrowing money. That makes the national debt rise, which then severely limits the government's ability to do anything to fix the original problem. And so the cycle just repeats.
The source material we're looking at puts it pretty bluntly. Short-term fixes, tinkering with taxes and spending here and there, they're just the wrong tools for the job. You wouldn't try to fix a complex performance engine with a pair of scissors and a hairdryer, would you?
So the big takeaway is this. The car doesn't just need a tune-up. It needs a fundamental structural overhaul. A real long-term repair job is needed to fix that clogged fuel line and, most importantly, to rebuild the engine's fundamental horsepower. And that is the critical question this analysis leaves us with. It forces us to move the conversation beyond arguing over simple tune-ups. We have to start thinking about the deep structural challenges ahead and maybe ask ourselves, who actually has the right tools and the blueprint to rebuild this engine from the ground up?